Ruzz Evans, thank you for joining me on the latest episode of Pedalpocalypse.
Thank you for having me.
The concept being, which 3 pedals would you take with you into the apocalypse, should that ever occur?
Yep.
I guess occur again, because we just come out of it.
Yeah.
So, and looking at your pedal board here, it's kind of a stripped down board anyway, but you're touring the States at the moment. So
I am, yeah.
Do you normally have a bigger board than this?
No, I normally got a smaller board than this at home because I have an amp that does a lot more of what this does. So this is kind of my US setup that a friend of mine's kind of helped me put together and loaned me for when I tour over here.
Cool.
And it keeps me going.
Cool. And how long have you been touring here?
Well, I've been coming out to the States for about 6 years, I think. And it's been since COVID ended, it's been the last couple of years I've been really going for it. I love it over here.
Right.
So try and come out as much as possible.
We're in Riverside, California, in our studio, in the Bo Gregory studio here. But me and you are both from the same part of the world.
We're Southwesters in the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you discover the music?
I grew up with it. My dad was always into this kind of music, and I grew up with bands like Dr. Feelgood, 9 Below Zero, The Inmates. I'm sure it's like all bands you probably grew up with as well. Was introduced to George Thorogood and Jimmy Vaughan and Brian Setzer, and so that brought in the American side for me. But I think I was about 14 when Dad showed me a DVD of George Thorogood, and from that moment I was like, that's cool. I'm gonna do that, I think.
So, first pedal.
Yes.
What would be your choice number 1 to take with you?
My absolute number 1 would be the Reverb. I can't live without a Reverb.
Cool. And this seems like quite an extensive one. It's
So this is I was introduced to this a couple of years back by my friend in Palm Springs who works with this company, Surfy Industries. And as you can guess, they do a lot of stuff for surf music and surf guitar. So they really specialize in reverbs. And I came out in, I think it was August last year, and was borrowing an amp and stuff, and he introduced me to this because some of his amps that I really wanted to use didn't have a reverb on them, or the ones that did weren't quite in good enough condition to survive a tour, unfortunately. But he showed me this, and I fell in love with it because it's got 2 mixers on there, so it means I can have 2 different reverbs, or different levels of reverb, at just the flick of a switch, which for me is perfect because in my show I tend to have one certain amount of reverb for almost everything, but then if I'm going to play a ballad instrumental, I like to crank it up and make it a bit more dreamy and atmospheric. But with this, I can go from that kind of very standard bluesy reverb and just kind of kick it up a notch and just make it very dreamy and then stop it without having to run back to the amp too often.
And are they available in the UK, or is it this something you obviously got over here?
I think they are. So the company, from what my friend says, they're from Italy, or they're based in Italy, so it should be easy enough to get in the UK.
Well, do you want to give me a kind of a demonstration of those 2 kind of main sounds?
Yeah, so my first one, it's what I do for almost. I set it to where I feel like it's not getting in the way too much, but just helping the notes kind of sing over a bit more. So So that kind of very jump bluesy.
Yeah.
And then this one would be a bit more, a little bit more, like I said, dreamy. Just turn up a little bit more. But I might do something like
Okay, so moving on to pedal 2. You only get 3, so we're halfway there. What would be the second pedal you would take with you?
Second pedal will probably be the vibrato. Again, this is from Surfy Industries, and I was introduced to this quite recently. I've tried out some other tremolos and vibratos, and they're all great, but I've always been looking for something that's kind of like that Jimmy Vaughan 80s Leslie sound without having to cart around a Leslie. Or I've tried some of the other pedals, and some of them have been a little bit too much for what I do. But I tried this recently and I fell in love with it, because you can. So with this, I can turn the intensity down on it, and it keeps the kind of clarity of the guitar. It keeps it sound like a guitar, but it's still got that really smooth vibrato. I've tried some tremolos where it's just, I feel like I'm losing sustain and stuff for what I'm trying to play, because it's obviously the tremolo's knocking the volume down.
Right. Whereas
this, it feels so natural and. So it's just a nice, even vibrato that, again, it doesn't get in the way of the kind of guitar solos, but then crank it up and it's just got such a nice it's just so smooth, but it's not over the, for me it doesn't feel over the top, kind of like Leslie or
it subtly thickens your tone up a little bit, and
definitely.
And do you, when you're touring around and playing, and presumably you're probably a lot of the time, especially when you travel to Europe or travel to the States, you're using an amplifier that's not yours, and do these pedals help you kind of deal with that if
definitely
the amp isn't quite dialed in enough?
Definitely. Especially the reverb, because I've played some amps where the reverb's just not been quite what I'm looking for, or it's not strong enough, or so to have that is it's amazing, because I just plug straight into that, plug into the amp, and I got full control of the reverb I want, and it's the same every time. That the vibe is fantastic. I tried recently in New Jersey. I tried an old Magnetone that was apparently it came out of Muscle Shoals,
right?
And I can't remember the year of the amp, but I tried the vibrato on that, and that was seriously good. And I would say that's matching it. It's, yeah, I'm very impressed.
So pedal number 3, we've reached the end of the selection. What are you going for?
So I'm not entirely sure at the moment, because both of these last two I probably use the least.
Right.
So there's a fuzz there that my friend makes from Palm Springs, from Alameda Guitars, and it's called the Angry Hornet, and it's a great pedal. And I kind of use that if I'm loaned an amp that doesn't have a drive channel, or like a Blues Junior where it's got the volume and then the master, so you can drive the volume and keep. If it hasn't got that and it's a bigger amp that's just clean, then I'm kind of, without something like that, I'm kind of buggered, because my tone is like a slightly driven amp with then this put on top of it. So if I can't drive the amp, and are
you normally then kind of playing with your volume?
Yes.
To give you your lead level and your rhythm level to clean
all the time.
Yeah.
So that's usually my go-to. So with something like that, it helps with those moments. But again, like I said, I don't use it too much. I'm probably more likely to use the Echo more than anything. Again, because of, especially for ballad stuff, one of my absolute heroes is Brian Setzer, and I remember hearing his version of Sleepwalk, and he had this particular echo on it. I just thought, that sounds great. So if I can, I try and capture that.
Right.
And try. It's a bit tricky with reverb to not just have it as a massive wash, but I think that the echo would be kind of my number 3, because especially with like rockabilly stuff I might do, to get that slap back is quite beneficial as well. It just helps to push some of the notes along when you're doing more twiddly, intricate stuff.
Well, that's the interesting thing about, speaking to all these guitarists on this show. So many people approach things differently, and I think you're the first person that hasn't chosen a drive pedal.
Really?
Yeah. So all the others, there's definitely always that kind of key drive ingredient to their sound, because they myself, I have like 3 different drive pedals to do different types of drive. Probably everything you're just doing with a knob, I'm doing with pedals.
There's stuff especially on this guitar, like I know we talk about pedal, but part of my setup as well is with these pickups, because there's different kind of voicings within the pickups. If I need something that's driving a bit more, there's the last setting, which my friend calls Crush. It's all the coils on a one. It gives me that extra. It's almost like having a boost pedal without having to kick it on. I can just flick that back.
So tell me a little bit about that then. You have these pickups.
Cool.
Yeah.
So these are. So this is a 5420 Gretsch, but these are not pickups that come in.
Right.
So these are pickups that my friend in Palm Springs at Alameda Guitar makes, and they're called off Kiltertrons. So they were originally based on, or they would fit in a Filtertron casing, but because they were not Filtertrons and there was more going on, he cleverly came up with that name.
Right.
And they are. You have to go online for the full description, because I can't remember everything it says. It's like dual bobbin, multi-coil. I absolutely love them. They got 6 voices in each pickup, so it's like 3 single coil and then 3 humbuckers, and like I said, the final setting is all of the coils on at once, so it's pickups going full force. So if I just quickly, so this is the first setting. It should be like a lower output single coil. And then you got number 2, just a bit more twang, a little bit more body, and then you go to the humbuckers. A little bit more. And then Crush, which is this. When I need a drive boost, that's what I do. I bump it back to Crush,
right?
And then we've
and you can really hear the amp break up there.
You can, so it's just it's kind of added a lot more of a mid bump to it, some more volume, and it just helps the amp break up.
Nice.
And then we have added recently a push pull phase switch into this,
right?
And it works best. I find it works best on the Crush setting at the moment, because it takes out some of the body when you put them out of phase. The Crush setting, because it's adding more, it's now evening it out.
Right.
So if you, so that's the Crush normally, and then it's just such a West Coast tone. It's amazing.
Fascinating.
So between that and the very minimal pedals, I'm pretty set up. I don't need drive pedals necessarily.
Yeah.
It gets me out of that kind of worry, I guess.
Right.
It's
amazing, to have all that versatility. And just, does he just make those types which fit in Gretches, or did he make?
He's made some that will fit in Strats, Jazzmasters. He'll pretty much do. If you've got a particular guitar you want them in, he'll make a casing for them and get them sorted. Yeah, he's a mad scientist at all of this. He really is. He just started with the Gretsch style ones, but he's recently done a Jazzmaster, which is where this push pull came from, the idea for it, because he put it into a Jazzmaster with the switch, and I tried that out. It's like, I need that. I have to have that. So we worked it out for a Gretsch style, but he'll make it work. He'll make it work.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's ditch the third pedal.
And
allow you to take those pickups with you into the apocalypse.
That sounds good to me. Thank you.
Because it's a fascinating setup. It's so versatile, and I can imagine so many guitarists watching this will their head will suddenly go, oh, wow, that's so many more things that I can achieve.
Yeah, I've had people live come up to me, kind of looking around, going, "You don't have much going. How did you get that guitar dirtier? And how did you make that scream like that?" I went, "What's this?" And just flick that back.
Right.
Like, what?
Yeah.
So
awesome. Well, Ruzz, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
It's been fascinating. I learned lots of new stuff.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. Cool. Good luck on the rest of the tour.